Well then, if you're interested in what's been going on at El Sol in the past 24 hours, we can certainly hook you up here at the Smash News Network, least busted name in news. Thanks for tuning in to the Daily Space Weather. Here's the past 24 hours of SDO, 171 angstroms, ionized iron. And we've had a slight dip in solar activity once again. So 2 days in a row, a little downturn in solar activity. Some little tiny pores opened up here. In other words, sunspots up here in the northwestern quadrant. And let's switch gears as the number of filaments on the Earth-facing portion of the solar disk is quite berserk. So we'll switch to 304 plus 193 angstroms. Those composites are fantastic at showing filaments. Like this one up here, it's, 50 Earth diameters in length there. It's a very, very significant filament. And interestingly, the largest flare of the past 24 actually came from around the limb. So we'll get to that momentarily. First, let's take a look at some close-up imagery. There is your northeastern quadrant, and we do think that there is a new sunspot rising somewhere behind those active regions, which currently are not sunspots. Here's that filament that we were talking about. And it is quite a filament indeed. It's also fairly well anchored, so it's been looking stable. Oh, there's some instability happening. All right. Excellent. Some instability happening over here on the eastern portion of it. That's what you want to see. Also, this crown prominence up here has been around for days, and it's starting to sort of rotate onto the far side of the sun there. You can see it kind of curving around. Great imagery there. I like it. Here is the northwestern limb. Here's the southwestern limb. And here is the southeastern limb. All right, so again, sunspots have, well, the number's been dropping slightly, although there is at least one new group. So this is the data from yesterday plus today in SDO intensitygram. We'll zoom in a little bit closer here. You can see there is at least one new sunspot that may get a name up here. Oh, it may have evaporated too. All right. So yeah, a slight lull in activity here. Lots of sunspots facing the Earth. But the real story is those filaments. Also, we had a coronal mass ejection impact a little bit earlier than expected. We'll get to that momentarily. That's your SDO magnetogram yesterday plus today, April 18th and 19th to date. So let's talk volcanoes. Semeru produced another pyroclastic flow as seen here. And let's see what else has been erupting. So Semeru. Let's see here. 14,000-foot ash plume produced by Semeru. It's a flight level 140. Dakono flight level 070 over Halmahera as Dakono explodes. Also, Aoba on Vanuatu now. Let's see. Emissions of steam and ash. Apparently venting activity. Produced a 2,300-foot plume of volcanic ash there over Vanuatu. Popocatépetl exploding in central Mexico, flight level 200. That is a 20,000-foot ash plume as Popocatépetl explodes. Santiaguito exploding in Guatemala. No indication of the ash plume size over Guatemala there from Santiaguito. However, Fuego producing a 15,000-foot plume of volcanic ash as it explodes. Flight level 150. Flight level 230 over Ecuador from Sangay. And no emissions observed from Revenador, Sabancaya producing a 23,000-foot plume of volcanic ash as it explodes. It's a flight level 230. Please do not pole vault. the caldera. Next, global seismicity. And there are the past 90 days. We indeed had the largest quake of the past 24 hours just in the past few hours. So that is the location of that one at Papua New Guinea. It was a 6.3 magnitude. And that one occurred at 9:06 Universal Time this morning on April 19th. So quite a few quakes here around the Pacific Rim once again. Some quakes in the center of the U.S. None over a 5 magnitude, therefore will not be reported, but a bunch of quakes there on the west coast of the U.S. So just a quick reminder that any earthquake can be a foreshock. So Guerrero, Mexico saw a 5.2. That likely did some damage there. Showing up red on the pager. 5.2 there at Mexico. That was at 4:55 this morning. And let's get back to space. Here's one of our new favorite composites. This one is 171 plus 131 angstroms. And it's great at showing plasma orienting to magnetic field lines. That is the past 24 hours. And how about if we swap out the 131 for 211 angstroms? That's great at showing coronal holes in the extended corona, along with the house favorite 171 angstroms. The 10.7 centimeter radial flux has dipped a little bit once again. It's now at 150 solar flux units. And the 10.7, if you're not familiar with it, welcome to the channel, by the way, if you're new. The 10.7 centimeter radial flux comes from the upper chromosphere and lower corona, right about where my pointer is. And it is very proportional to sunspot number, directly proportional to sunspot number. Here's a one-year chart to put that in context for you. And as you can see there, the peaks in the red line, which is the sunspot number, are accompanied by peaks in the black line, which is the 10.7 centimeter radial flux. And it just broke through a support level here in the past few days, reaching up to 178 solar flux units. There was a support level there around 155 solar flux units. So now we're right back on that support level. Let us know in the comments what you think, if we're going to see an increase or a decrease in the radial flux between this video and tomorrow's daily space weather. Let's look at the space weather enthusiast dashboard here. These are NOAA's forecasts. And NOAA is forecasting some geomagnetic storms tomorrow. So tomorrow, midday on 4/20, expecting some mild geomagnetic activity there. Geomagnetic unrest. Just this side of a KP5 is expected. And again, we did see a CME impact a little bit earlier than expected. So we'll show you the data on that here in a minute. So that's NOAA's forecast. Let's see what their Enlil spiral looks like. I didn't actually check this out doing show prep today. There is NOAA's Enlil spiral. Let's take a brief look at NASA's Enlil spiral also, just to see if there's anything different there. So that's NOAA's forecast. We'll bring up the Integrated Space Weather Analysis Center. This is the Space Weather Prediction Center by NOAA. This here is the Integrated Space Weather Analysis Center. You just click Events. And then, whoops, we want to use this one. There we go. And we'll look at dynamic pressure. And NASA not forecasting a strike at all. NASA forecasting a miss. So that was actually what we forecasted as well. Anyway, that's the forecast from NOAA. Expecting some geomagnetic unrest by midday tomorrow, Universal Time. Pushing a KP5. Now we'll show Earth's magnetic moment from space for the past 4 hours. This is magnetohydrodynamic pressure. And we did see some quite strong fields, creating some likely induction into the earthly system. Let's let that play all the way through to get a full run. Again, that's the past 4 hours of Earth's magnetic moment from space. The units depicted are nanopascals, which are magnetohydrodynamic pressure. And there's a fairly high pressure environment. Here's Earth's magnetic moment from the ground for the past 4 hours. And the incoming solar plasma indeed did likely spark some aurorae. If you've got images of the aurora, share it with us on Instagram, or better yet on Twitter. All over the internet at Smashomash. Here we'll show global magnetic perturbations at the ground level also. The units depicted here are magnetic flux density nanotesla. We saw some quite strong fields late in the day yesterday. We'll get to it here briefly. So that's what's going on. Some aurora definitely kicked up as a result of a CME impact, which must have been moving a little bit faster than we anticipated. Anyway, KP index is currently at 3.66. We did briefly make it into geomagnetic unrest at 1500 Universal Time yesterday, just for a brief period. KP 4.33 was the peak of that. Again, current conditions are 3.67, just this side of geomagnetic unrest. And the real-time solar wind has some interesting data in it indeed. So, CME impact happened right in here. And you can see we saw some quite strong fields, and there was a very strong negative BZ signal there. So that induces a lot of current. You see that top pane there? It says 19 in white. That's the total field. The BT, nanotesla, 19 nanotesla, with a negative 15 nanotesla BZ. So that is quite a significant negative BZ signal. That induces a lot of current into the earthly system. If that would have been a positive BZ, it would be colliding with the earthly system. But a negative BZ induces current, pulling material into the earthly system, and that's what causes geomagnetic unrest. So that quickly subsided, though, into a positive. So some wild back and forth action there for a brief moment. And then we saw the solar wind speed come up to about 600 kilometers per second. And I think there may be two different regimes working here at the same time, a coronal hole high-speed stream and a CME impact. It's pretty much the only thing that's going to explain this ongoing signal here. So this area here does not look like a CME impact. That looks like a coronal hole high-speed stream, especially with this extended plasma temperature signal here. But that looks like it's subsiding too. Anyway, you be the judge. Let us know what you think in the comments. Current conditions are just under 8 protons per cubic centimeter for the solar wind density. Solar wind speed, well, make it just under 9 protons per cubic centimeter. Solar wind speed here, 468 kilometers per second. And let's look at magnetic data next. So we saw a big spike in the GOES magnetometer here. GOES magnetometer reading all the way up to, well, nearly 200 nanotesla. So that caused the entire scale to expand. Just to give you a better context of that, let's look at the 7-day chart. See that big spike there going on just around noon local time there for the GOES 16. So those are your GOES magnetometers. And let's look at the heliospheric current sheet next. Here's our top view ecliptic plane field plot. Again, we do expect to see some sunspots moving in the northeast in the next 24 to 36 hours. At the moment, Earth is just in a south pole current sheet. No changes expected coming soon to that. Here's our line of sight field plot. Solar B field depicted in blue. That's the field that goes through the magnet, this magnet being the sun. Next, our line of sight coronal hole plot as we move to coronal holes, which are, by the way, super important to the solar polar field reversal process. We've got south pole-oriented coronal holes here that are very well defined. And let's bring up the latest image. There's the latest image, and here's 211 angstroms from SDO for the past 24 hours. See those very well defined south pole coronal holes. These are all south pole coronal holes. So this is south, this is south, this is south. And that brings us to sunspots. So again, sunspots have been mostly flat here over the past 24 hours, mostly stable. Two separate pores opened up here in the northwest. Not sure if those will be intact or not. We'll show you high-res imagery at the end of the video to see if those are intact just before we do our meteorology segment. So that's the current situation. The most likely place to see large flares would certainly be sunspot 3282. So this large group right here, although it's been really all of these sunspots have been underperforming in terms of flare production. And let's take a look at the SDO once again here. This time we'll show it in gray instead of orange. Once again, this is yesterday plus today, and we're going to zoom in closely enough here to see all the sunspot regions. So I suspect that this trailing one here might be named. That one right there, this leading one, looks like it's actually evaporated. And anyway, again, that's yesterday plus today, April 18th and 19th. Not a lot of changes there going on at the moment. Next, we'll talk energetic particles and solar flares. No solar energetic particle events happening. The GOES proton flux remains flatlined for an extended period here, actually. Again, sunspots have been underperforming in terms of X-ray flux. And the largest flare of the past 24 just occurred a few hours ago. It was a C3.96. Peak flux was around 8:40 universal time this morning. Here are the past 24 hours in SDO 94 plus 131 angstroms. And that flare indeed did come from down here. There still is a possibility for large flares to come from around the rim. In other words, we could see, around the limb, I should say, it is possible that we could see large flares in active regions that are not even visible from Earth. So anyway, let's move on here to check out a star chart. That's what's going on over our heads in Lehigh Valley, Pennsylvania. Let's just press the Now button to get the latest update. Jupiter and the moon very close together in the sky there, the tiny sliver of a moon being chased by the sun across the ecliptic, represented by that green line there. That's an aqua blue line. Also, the Pleiades just rose. The Seven Sisters just rose over Lehigh Valley, Pennsylvania. Excuse me. That star chart is from skyandtelescope.org. Next, the solar system forecast. So we're approaching a new moon tomorrow. Here's your 1 week forecast for the solar system on this lonely side of the solar system, which has no gas giants. Jupiter, Saturn, Uranus, and Neptune, all over there on the opposite side. Here's your 1 week forecast. As Mercury and Venus swing around to give a little company to terrestrial inner planets on this side of the solar system. As Mars is left in the red dusty dust. By the way, today's featured product is the Galactic Federation not Sporces. The Galactic Federation Special Forces. I'm wearing it. Because keep in mind, folks, I'm not only Smash-O-Mash, I am also a client. Again, today's featured product, the Galactic Federation Special Forces. If you're sick of what's going on in your household, neighborhood, borough, township, county, perhaps your state? Are you tired of what's going on in your national geographic region? Are you tired of what's going on east or west of the Mississippi, wherever you're located? Are you feeling oppressed? Are you feeling like your freedom and liberty has been violated in the past 3 years in a completely unacceptable way? And are you sick of what's going on in your continent, nation, hemisphere, planet, solar system? If so, why not support the Galactic Federation Special Forces? Tell your friends and foes that we over here at the Smash News Network, least busted name in news, said Universum Liberate. They'll probably think that we're in the Illuminati, and that'll probably freak them out, as our merch is designed to make everybody mad. Links below the video to our merch shop, Redbubble shop there. Also on the homepage. And let's get to coronagraphs. So here are yesterday's coronagraphs. Nothing too exciting going on there in those 101 frames. Some minor CMEs happening. We don't think they're earthly directed. So that is 101 frames from yesterday. Here are an additional 26 frames from today. 2 CMEs happening there. Those also do not appear to be earthly directed. Let's take a look at some more coronagraphs, like Stereo A's coronagraph. There it is on the left. Soho Lasco C3 located at Lagrangian point 1 on the right. Also a view of Jupiter there on the right frame there. The Soho Lasco C3. So we've also got custom 24-hour coronagraph videos, as we usually show on the channel. Let's get a little closer here. We've got SDO 193 angstroms, Soho Lasco C2 in red, Soho Lasco C3 in blue. And we'll get even closer there. And those CMEs are very close to the limbs, if not somewhat on the far side of the sun, not earthly directed. Here's the past 24 hours in just 193 angstroms by itself. And I'm getting a smiley face vibe here. I'm getting a smiley face vibe here, folks. What's up with that? South Pole-oriented coronal hole smiley faces. Which brings us to filaments. Now, we've been naming filaments on Twitter after living people. If you want to name filaments, make sure you join us on Twitter. If you don't have an account, you'll have to create an account. We don't do it in the YouTube comments or even on our own websites. We name filaments on Twitter. So here's a fantastic view from El Teide, Spain. Let's blow that up a little bit. And let's get me off screen. So, massive number of filaments. We had as many as 7 in our last illustration. So here's 1, 2, 3, 4. Actually, give me a minute here. I want to bring up the last frame, because some of those filaments could be ejecting there. Let's start that over again. So lots of filaments here. 1, 2, 3, 4. This one's already named the Bob Lehman filament, so leave that one alone. 5, 6. At least 6 filaments that could get names remain on the solar disk. And those can be the source of coronal mass ejections. Remember, folks, you don't need to see solar flares or even sunspots to see coronal mass ejections. We covered plenty of them. In fact, we learned how to forecast coronal mass ejections before they even leave the solar corona, much closer to solar minimum. So that was another answer to a question not asked. And here's the past 24 hours in the classic 304 angstroms wavelength from SDO. And I just want you to look at one thing here. Notice the extreme detail of the SDO imagery. It's got a narrow field of view, but it's got a very high resolution. It's great at looking at features that are directly on the solar disk. Not so good at looking at features in the corona, at least not in this wavelength. The GO16 SUVI, on the other hand, shows a lot more in terms of its field of view. So it's got less resolution, but a wider field of view, so it's fantastic at showing coronal mass ejections. Looks like some activity is happening down here also. Indeed, some flaring right there in the southeast. So a likely active region showing up down there as well, as the flares are giving away its location. And thanks for leaving comments, Mike and Carl. Here come bonus features, starting with satellites community dashboard. We do see some significant surface charging hazards here in the Pacific Ocean, moving toward the central Pacific. Those are low-energy electrons building up on the outside of spacecraft. Surface charging hazards. Follow it yourself if you like at the satellite's community dashboard. Electron flux here remains low. No surprises there, as there's been a CME impact and a likely coronal hole high-speed stream mixed in there. Goes electron flux remaining at low levels, and what's the forecast? Well, NOAA is forecasting a little uptick in the electron flux. And I would say this is going to stay low here for a couple more days, but we'll have to see what happens. Join us in tomorrow's Daily Space Weather video to see if I was correct. There's the one-year chart to put it in context, and this trough right here, it can only last so long. But if there is another CME impact, I think it's more likely for it to stay low. Let us know what you think in the comments. And let's take a look at the F layer of the ionosphere next, the vibrational frequency at 300 kilometers of altitude, the bridge between Earth and space. This data from Australian Government Bureau of Meteorology. We are certainly seeing some low-frequency anomalies in the northern hemisphere. But don't worry, if that's not clear to you by looking at this imagery, we've got the anomalygram as well. So here's the anomalygram. Anomaly in megahertz from a 30-day median. And I suspect that a bunch of material has been injected into the earthly system, as that is typically what we see with low-frequency anomalies. Anyway, that's the order of the day. Lots of red there on the anomalygram. We'll briefly show the latest image. There's 12:15 universal time ionogram and 12:15 universal time anomalygram. Again, lots of red there. A lot of low-frequency anomalies happening. Probably an indication of a lot of material. Continuing on to our total electron content forecast. Feel free to pause the video on this frame if you're not familiar with distances to things like your GPS satellites in miles. And there's the total electron content forecast. This will show you the most likely places to see GPS errors. Free electrons cause signal refraction. And that's what are being depicted here. This will give you a half-hour forecast also, by the way. That'll give you a half-hour forecast of the total electron content, giving you some idea of where the most likely spots are for major GPS anomalies, GPS errors. And one of the ways you can help out your GPS is to turn on Wi-Fi location accuracy while navigating. That will help to use IP addresses and their known ground locations to calculate your position. Next, the latest intensitygram and latest colorized magnetogram. Again, I think we do have a new sunspot up here. And it is a beta-gamma class sunspot group, so that should get a name today. Besides that, again, things have been mostly stable here. So there is the rock back. And is there a new sunspot down here? Nope. What about in the northeast? Nope. And let's get to meteorology, which I accidentally clicked on. So what we're looking at here is sea surface temperature anomaly. That's the colored portion. And we are looking at ocean currents. That's the animated portion. Lake Superior anomalously cold, Lake Erie anomalously warm. Some very warm water there around Maryland, New Jersey, Delaware, Massachusetts, and New England. And some quite cold water here, kind of in the middle of the jet stream, possibly caused by things like snow melt. Keep in mind, at a given temperature, fresh water is less massive than salt water and tends to sit on top of salt water. That water there, 10 degrees Fahrenheit below normal. This water here, almost 10 degrees Fahrenheit above normal. And if you've got your fingers crossed for a year without a summer in Europe, well, it's not going to happen. The Gulf Stream is still making it up there to warm places like Ireland and Iceland, an indication that you are not descending into a snowball Earth, spooky grand solar minimum ice age. It's just not happening anytime soon. And we'll just show the rest of the sea surface temperature anomalies. You can see the La Nina situation breaking up here as the cold equatorial Pacific water is largely gone and now in its normal temperature range for the most part. Likelihood of El Nino much higher now as a result of this. A bunch of warm water in the northern Pacific. Here's the Southern Ocean while we're over here. Pretty cold in the Southern Ocean for the most part. Indian Ocean. Most of it is slightly anomalously warm. And there is the Atlantic. And let's don't forget the Arctic. All right, so let's get to our normal meteorology stuff here. We'll show winds. And there are the jet streams of the eastern world. Shout out to our viewers from all around the planet. Who knew we'd make so many friends and foes by putting out facts about space and Earth weather? There are the surface wind scenarios for the eastern world, surface winds of the western world depicted here. Jet streams depicted here. Pretty broken up jet streams there. Doubled up over the North American continent, converging over the Atlantic Ocean, and then diverging once again, and then converging to the west of Africa. Central world jet streams are looking like this. Check out the huge high pressure zone here over Scandinavia. A huge upper level high there rotating clockwise. A giant anticyclone. And these are the surface winds of the Central world, Europe, Africa, and the Middle East. Next, your weather.gov map, but first, clouds and fog. Depicted by 3.9 micrometer radiation, part of the infrared spectrum. Those waves are about 1/10 the size of a human hair, by the way, if you're wondering. That's what's going on with clouds and fog. And here's your weather.gov map. Now, if your location is lit, head to weather.gov and click your location. There are a few too many counties for us to cover, but we'll briefly scroll down to show you the key at least, as we like to compress and condense a lot of information into the videos. Condensed matter matters. And let's look at some forecasts. So first, our temperature anomaly forecast in degrees Celsius based on the 72-hour GFS model. All right, we got some warm temperatures coming to the mid-Atlantic states. Oh, yeah. And by the way, if you're into cycling, come visit us in Lehigh Valley, Pennsylvania. The roads are some of the best in the world, and the cycling community is one of the most extensive in the world. Come to Trexlertown, Pennsylvania, if you want to ride with some world-class cyclists on some world-class roads. Again, that's your temperature anomaly forecast in degrees Celsius, based on the GFS model. Next, the same model, pressure and precipitation. Some additional ice coming. Yeah, some more ice coming to Minnesota, parts of North Dakota, and Canada especially. The Western Great Lakes. Some ice. Some ice, some wintry mix, freezing rain, sleet, etc., and wet snow. Also some severe weather happening there around the Mississippi Valley. Last but not least, 72-hour pressure and wind forecast. Once again, based on the GFS model. You see that low will move down toward Kansas and then back up toward the Great Lakes. That is surface pressure and wind at 10 meters altitude. Here's your windy.com map. There's the current pressure environment. Let's zoom out for our international viewers. Check it out. There's that upper level anticyclone that we were talking about. It's a very high pressure zone over places like the North Sea, Scotland, and Norway. Check out the lightning. We had quite a significant lightning storm here over the north central U.S. Places like South Dakota, Nebraska, Iowa, Minnesota, and Wisconsin saw some lightning. And let's see if we have any terrestrial strikes. There's the current map from lightningmaps.org. We indeed do have some lightning here, west of Madison. Hey, Richland Center. There's thunder rolling in. Anyway, those are the active cells over the U.S. Quite a lot of activity there in Eastern Europe. Next, your current radar. Doppler radar are ground-based systems that depict vertical motion in the air column. Here is clouds and fog. And if that's unclear, the water vapor should help things out. Rapid precipitation happening there. As you can see, lots of water vapor vanishing off of the map. An indication that it is now on the ground in those locations. Here's a recap. U.S. Doppler radar. Shortwave radiation showing clouds and fog. And there is your water vapor. So that's where we'll have to close things out. And thanks for tuning in, folks. Congratulations on realizing the Smash News Network least busted name in news exists. Don't forget to press like, subscribe, share, etc. Tell your friends and foes about the channel. And if you want to support us, consider becoming a member of the Smash Team. These videos are brought to you in part by the Smash Team at smashomash.com/Smash Team. So support the channel over there. There's even a bronze membership level for those of you unable or unwilling to open your cobweb-encrusted wallets and send us a few bucks per month. Also, don't forget about the 420 sale. You can find links to that below the video and on the homepage. At our Hemp Lucid shop, enter the promo code SMASHOMASH to save some dough on checkout. If you're thinking about shopping at Hemp Lucid, help out the channel by shopping via our link. Again, below the video and on the homepage at smashomash.com, the official homepage of the Smash News Network least busted name in news. Once again, thanks for tuning into the video. We'll see you soon as we bring you the most detailed solar imagery and comprehensive space weather you'll find in the known universe. In the meantime, I'll have been your host, Dan, a.k.a. Smashomash, signing off, and may that solar wind be at your back.